Greetings and salutations, Dota fans. It is I, Badger, back for our session of Badger's Briefings. We are going to take a quick break from 2012, a quick hiatus. The TI2 retrospective will be coming soon, but before that happens, we have a very current event to cover. As it currently stands, we are at the top 4 in TI11, the 2022 International. There are 4 teams left. In the winners' finals are Team Secret and Tundra. In the losers' semifinals are Team Liquid and Team Aster. As a result, given its extraordinarily current event, I'm going to discuss the implications, the ramifications, the legacy-defining stuff that would happen in terms of any 4 of these teams winning TI. In this video, I'll be discussing the 2 teams in loser semis, Team Liquid and Team Aster. And in the next video, which will come out tomorrow, I will be discussing Team Secret and Tundra Gaming, the 2 teams in winners finals. I'm going to start with Team Liquid. Team Liquid is made up of 1 Finn for Swedes, carry the Finn Matumba Man, on the mid lane Meke, in the off lane Zai, 4 support Boxy, 5 support Insania, and captain for that matter. Starting with Matu. Matu has a very long, storied Dota 2 career. He was on the 4 anchors in the C captain roster in 2014, but he really becomes relevant in terms of being like a top pro player in late 2015. In the post TI5 Great European Shuffle, Kuro is no longer on Secret. He's making his own roster. He's captaining it. Brings in longtime veteran Fata. Brings in, very talented support player Jerax. And to complete the roster, he brings in 2 extremely young core players. He brings in Mind Control. And then looking at carry, he says, you know what? Well, I can't get Miracle. Secrets and OG have already had their first picking of these top prospects. So who's the next best player? You know what? Maybe it's this Matumba Man guy. Maybe he can be this truly elite core player for me. Turns out, Kuro's right. That roster will become Team Liquid. Team Liquid go on to be a very good team. They got 2nd at the Shanghai Major that year. They got 2nd at the Manila Major. They go to TI. Bit of disappointments. Fata is then off the team. They bring in Miracle from OG. 2017 comes around. They win TI7. That's your number 1 big accomplishment right there. You say, all right, now Matu's a TI winner. You have reached the pinnacle of the Dota scene. A lot of money, a lot of prestige. You've won TI. They stick together for the next 2 years. They don't win another TI, but again, they're a very good team at this point. They're still very competitive. Eventually, though, Matu, going into TI9, is off Team Liquid. Goes and joins this Chaos club, more or less at the last minute. And they actually managed to make it to TI9. They get last place, but even making the tournament in itself is a bit of a miracle. A lot of a testament to how well that Matu played on that team. After that, though, ends up joining Team Secret. They make a new roster. He joins Zai over in Team Secret. This is the roster with Matu, Zai, Puppy, Yapsor, and Nisha. And they're a very good team. They're consistently good throughout the years going into. It ends up being a 2-year season between TI9 and TI10. TI10 ends up happening in 2011 due to the pandemic stuff, but ultimately we end up in a situation where they go to TI10 in 2021. They get top 3, so again, a very good placement for Matu. Follows up with another great TI placements. But after this tournament, they say, you know what? We're going to have me and Zai leave. We're going to make this friend stack. Now, other than Matu, the other extremely long tenured Dota 2 pro is Zai. Zai came over from Han. He was, one of those super, super young top prospects. I think he was like 13 or 14 when he was really breaking into the Han scene. He was PPD's protege, more or less. They were good together in Han. They move over to Dota 2. They spend 2013 more or less acclimating over to Dota 2. They recognize, hey, Han's on the decline, Dota 2 is on the rise. It's a good time to switch. The 2 of them end up joining the Sad Boys stack that becomes the 2014 Evil Geniuses. Now that right there is an extraordinarily good team. They go over and actually have Zai swap roles to be on this roster. he was an offlane player, and Han switched to playing 4 support to be on this team, and it ended up being a good decision. They get top 3, third place at TI4, the best placement of any non-Chinese team at the tournaments. Zai sticks with EG, they're still pretty good, but then again, we have a bit of a mini shuffle, and as a result, Zai and Arteezy end up going to Team Secret. Team Secret become the best team of that period of time. After the DAC 2015, which EG won, Secret became the best team in the world up until TI5. They won ESL Frankfurt, which is there was no majors at the time, so it wasn't a major win, but it was more or less equivalent to what a major win is worth today, winning that Frankfurt major tournament. Extremely stacked, big prize pool, very prestigious. Secret were the favorite going to the TI5. Zai was playing well. Unfortunately, did not go well. Secret imploded. Rough tournaments. Zai goes on hiatus, returns to his studies, comes back in a year, rejoins EG. EG actually had I think an invite to TI, at the very least a guaranteed invite to the regional qualifiers. They instead broke the roster lock just to bring Zai back. Like, you know what? We'd rather have Zai than have an invite. Our team is not very good right now. We've been struggling this year. So they changed the roster again. They bring Zai back. Ends up being the correct decision. They win the Opens, they win the closed qualifiers, go to TI, get top 3. They lose to Digital Chaos in the losers finals. Bit of a rough loss there, but again, top 3. Now 2 times for Zai. Good placement. Zai sticks it out with EG for a bit. They have a very intriguing roster, but never able to get over the hump with that roster with bringing in crits to EG, but what can you do sometimes? Ends up eventually leaving for a number of different teams. Ends up a few years later on Team Secret, and he would become Secret's offlaner for a long time. They were, year in, year out, pretty good. This ends up resulting in a 4th place TI placement, I believe at TI9. They end up then going to TI10, get top 3 there as well, so another top 3 placement for Zai. This is now his 3rd difference, top 3 at TI. But all said and done, the Secret lineup wasn't necessarily gelling the way it wanted to, so he took Matu with him, and they make this new stack. Now, the other 3 players don't have the same, super tenured Dota 2 careers that Matu and Zai had, but they were very good Dota 2 players nonetheless. All 3 also are Swedish, and all 3 also have a Han background. But unlike Zai, who left Han in 2013, these guys stuck around for a long time after that. One of the things with Han is, year after year, these top players would just leave the scene. They would take an exodus to permanently leave for Dota 2. So as a result, by 2014, 15, 16, a lot of the top talents started to hollow out. But a few good players were still there and very competitive, and they were, really great players. And one of them was Boxy. Boxy had stuck with Han well into 2015. He actually ended up winning the Han Tour Season 3 World Finals with Bad Monkey Gaming, and that was, quite the accomplishment. Notably, his team ended up placing above Sync Esports. This is the team with Insania and Mikke and Kezu, and you'll notice those are 2 of his future teammates that he beat in his tournaments, placement-wise, but Mikke and Insania were on the generally better Han team. They generally were the better team of these Sync Esports teams, but they end up losing out on that Han Tour Finals. All said and done, all 3 are over deep into Dota 2 by the end of 2016. They all end up joining this Alliance stack in 2017. And says, you know what, we're all, relatively new players to Dota, younger guys. Alliance is mixing it up. They're looking for something to make their roster actually good again. So they bring in less proven players. I mean, Insania was somewhat proven, but not that proven at this point. The other 2 players were almost entirely unproven, but they were good players, and everyone knew they were highly skilled players. This Alliance team, slowly builds over the years. They end up in a situation at TI9 where they're in the bracket stage. It's round 1 losers, but unfortunately that's a situation where Insania accidentally picked Gyro instead of banning Gyro. A very unfortunate moment. They lose. Alliance get 13th to 16th. Those 3 players end up leaving again, and they join the new Team Liquid. The old Team Liquid, the Kuroki captained units. straight up left the organization. They made their own organization called Nigma Galaxy, and that was just kind of how it went. They just left. So Liquid took a chance on these younger prospects. They end up with a roster of eventually Boxy, Mickey, Insania, Taiga, and Kezu. And that lineup would try to make it to TI10. Didn't make it. They lost in the European qualifiers. So I said, we're going to upgrade a little bit in terms of bringing in new, fresh faces. Obviously, Kezu, Taiga, good players, but let's mix it up. Let's see what we can do here. And that ended up being a very good decision, because now you have these free agents from Team Secret, Matu and Zai. You bring them in, mostly Swedish players, bit of a friend stack there, a good vibe stack. And you say, you know what? We actually like playing Dota together. Matamba Man's going to retire after this season. Let's have him retire on top. One last ride. Let's see what happens. They roll the dice. In online play, this Team Liquid team is elite in the European DPC tours. They're consistently a top placer. Problem is they end up going to LAN, and they struggle. At the Stockholm Major, they get 9th. At the Arlington Major, they get 9th. At the third-party tournaments, the Riyadh Masters and the ESL Malaysia, they fall flat there as well. It's a rough season on LAN for Liquid, but at least they consistently were able to show they were good online. Because they failed at the majors, they did not get a direct invite to TI, but they did have an online qualifier, and in the online qualifier, they clinched their spot in the top 3, guaranteeing at least a last chance qualifier invite. One key problem was they end up losing to Entity and then end up losing to Team Secret, so they don't get the direct invite slot. They do get a spot in the last chance qualifiers. And in most years, there is not a last chance qualifier. Luckily for them, this year there is a last chance qualifier. They go to that. They end up dropping in the winners brackets to Virtus Pro, who were one of the favorites to win the last chance qualifiers. At that point, it's back against the wall. They have to beat Extreme Gaming and VG Gaming, the 2 Chinese teams. They were 2 of the teams that people were favoring to make it out. And they have to rematch Virtus Pro, the team that had just beat them earlier and the favorite to make it out of the last chance qualifiers. Well, they beat them. They get the revenge on Virtus Pro. And just like that, they're the 20th of 20 teams to make it into TI11, the last team in. So because they were the 20th of 20 teams, they were the last team to make it. They didn't even win the last chance qualifiers. They got second in those. Not everyone was that high on Liquid going into the tournaments, but let's put it this way. Liquid proved the doubters wrong very, very quickly. They go on a tear through the group stage. They end up second place in Group A. They go 13-5, only behind the EG team, who would start off the group stage 14-2, ended up 14-4. That's a different story. They go into the bracket stage. They're in winners. In their first round, winners' opponents is Team Aster. And Team Aster actually beat them fairly heavily. It was a good showing from Aster, and for Liquid, they kind of fell flat in their face. They're now in a situation where it's do or die just to qualify for top 8s. They have to play against Entity, a team who, had experience beating them. Liquid had good experiences with beating Entity. And for Entity, it's like, all right, we beat this team in the European qualifier. It's now time to run it back. Let's try to do it again. They play a 3-game series. Games 1 and 2 end up being split, of course. Both teams, they traded little Shrek picks. They go 1-1. And in Game 3, Liquid, they rely on this Spirit Breaker mid. They have a bold card to make in their elimination game, but it ends up paying off. They win this game. They eliminate Entity at 9th. They go to the top 8s. And they go on to play OG, who have been, a very elite team. It is the organization that won TI twice. Entirely different roster, but they did win the Stockholm Major that year. They got 4th at the Arlington Major as well. They had been one of the better teams over the year. They played well in third-party tournaments as well, so there were a lot of expectations for OG, both in terms of how they performed in that Dota year, but also in terms of the organizational name recognition. And they just slapped down OG. A lot of people had OG favored going into the series, and Liquid just slapped them down. They beat the absolute piss out of them. The 2 games were fairly one side as far as these playoffs have gone. They played well in the lanes. They did a bit of an outdraft. and they just beat OG. OG were out of 7th. And then at this point, we run into a best of 3 versus Thunder Awaken, and this is a truly all-time great banger of a series. Game 1, it looked like it was going Team Liquid's way. They were in the winning game state, but Thunder Awaken, they turn it around. Dark Niggle has an all-time great game in terms of playing the Mars mid, and Thunder Awaken ended up turning this situation where they were going to be 1 game down into a situation where they were 1 game up. And Liquid are back against the wall where if they lose 1 more game, they're out of TI at 5th. Game 2 goes Liquid's way. The most one-sided game of the series, but then we get into Game 3, which was one of the all-time great TI games. Liquid initially ended up in the winning game states, but Thunder Awaken, they grow into their draft, and they're in a position where they're winning these mid to late game team fights. They get quite the lead cultivated. They get Roshan, they grab the Aegis. They actually leave the cheese in the pits, which ended up being a mistake they would regret later. They take a fight at Liquid's high grounds. Liquid have multiple points in that team fight and nearly lost the game. There was a bash to cancel Black Hole that ended up being very lucky. Multiple heroes got their buyback in the middle of the fight and were able to buy that because they got the money in the middle of the team fights. And in using their buybacks, they forced multiple diebacks out of Thunder Awaken. Liquid proceeded to run it down from their Dire base, down the mid lane to the Radiant base. And it's a situation where all you have to do is win this throne siege. Problem is you have Sacred on the Enigma on defense. He goes up, he black holes Mickey's middle lane Pangolier. Pangolier is dying during the black hole. It's an incredibly close call. Mickey ends up with quite literally 1 HP. If any one of these damage rolls had been 1 damage higher, he would have died there. But Matu comes in, clutch infest, saving Mickey. As a result, Liquid are able to get the siege done in time before Thunder Awaken are fully able to defend again with all their heroes. Their throne is dead. And Liquid do it. They eliminate the feel-good South American story of Thunder Awaken at 5th. They go into the top 4. And it's funny because, the team that was waiting for them was the team they lost to in winners. That would be Team Aster. Now, Team Aster has a very different story in terms of Team Liquid. To understand a lot of these players' backgrounds, you have to understand the way that Chinese Dota is generally structured. Unlike the West, where you generally see, these individual standalone teams, the Chinese organizations tend to roster more than 1 team, where they'll have their main team, and often they have an academy team or a youth team just to develop players. You used to see it a lot, especially back in 2014, 15, 16, 17 sort of era. We start with Monet, who is a product of these teams. He was a part of initially the FTD Club C, but ended up in LGD's farm system. The CDEC Avenger team at first, then later LGD Forever Young, and he actually ended up being a really great player on LGD Forever Young. They ended up bringing some older players onto this team to make it good. He was no longer an academy player anymore. He was now playing with some of the big boys, some of the veterans of the league, and he ends up taking that into TI11 in 2017, where he gets a top 3 placement. They end up losing to Team Liquid in losers. And for Monet, it's alright, I went to TI, I got top 3. I'm sure there's some more great times ahead of me, and well, unfortunately for him, the win would not come yet, because since that day, and there actually has not been a Chinese TI win since 2016. More or less all of Monet's career has occurred after that moment. So he ends up not going to TI8. His team didn't qualify. Ends up, after that, moving to RNG, the Royal Never Give Up team. Over on RNG, again, plays well, goes to TI9, gets top 8, good placements. But when all's said and done, he ends up moving from RNG to Team Aster. And this Team Aster team has been together for a decent quantity of time, but this is not the exact same roster. They still had the White Album and Lanham on the team at this point. That's the lineup they have going into TI10 in 2021. Unfortunately, they had a bit of a COVID situation. They had to play from hotel rooms. They end up losing in the first round of losers in the brackets. They go out at 13th place. Unfortunate tale there. But, I mean, Monet has been a very carry player over a lot of that time. You know, he's been statistically one of the better Chinese carries of the last half decade. Speaking of, relevant Chinese players of the last half decade, we have Ori. Now, Ori also came from, a relatively unheralded team called, I think it was Duobao. Weren't really that relevant, but Vici Gaming, when they were retooling their roster, bring him in, and Vici Gaming, they basically constantly change their roster over the next few years. They're constantly, bringing in veterans, getting rid of veterans, bringing in young guys, doing all this different stuff, and the one constant there is Ori. He's just always in this roster. No matter what happens, they have Ori. And a good reason why Vici actually believed in him, because Vici were pretty good during a lot of the different periods there. They didn't go to TI7. They did not make it out of the qualifiers, but they did manage to make it to TI8. Problem is, TI8 didn't go that well. They get 9th place, losing their team's secret in losers. They go on to TI9. Did a better placement there, 5th to 6th, but still losing the team's secret in losers, falling short of expectations. And then Ori, at this point, says, you know what? I'm going to stay with Vici. This Vici team, they're my team. Let's stick it out again. Let's go to TI10 in 2021. And at this point, it's another 5th to 6th placing. They lose to Invictus Gaming, IG, in losers. Unfortunate loss there for Ori. And at that point, after being on Vici for nearly a half decade, he ends up on Team Aster. Now, the careers of XXS, the offlane player, and Bobakov, the support, are inherently linked. Those two have been together for a very, very long time. They both came up in Team DK's farm system. At the same time, they both ended up on moving from DK's farm system to IG's farm system. They ended up on IG Vitality. Both of them played very well in IG Vitality, and they both got promoted from the secondary Vitality roster to the main IG roster. And they played on IG for a few years. They were pretty good on IG for a while. They placed well in the majors they went to. They end up going to TI7. They get 5th place at TI7, I believe. Yeah, they get 5th place at TI7. Very good placing there, but ultimately they end up moving again after a few years on IG. They move over to, at this point, the first makings of the Team Aster lineup. And at this point, they're trying to move it around after 2 years on IG, and they're the foundation of the new Aster lineup. Problem is, this Aster team was never able to really have great placements at TI. Their best placement was that aforementioned 13th to 16th in TI10. Not ideal there, but after that 13th place, we bring in some new players. They brought in Ori from Vici, as I already mentioned, but they bring in a younger player. Actually, at the very least, a less experienced professional player, that being PQ. Now, PQ, he had been on these lesser Chinese teams for years. He had been on like Team Gaming and the Aster secondary team, Aster Aries. But in 2021, after TI10, he got his main shot to be on the main Aster roster. And that was basically how it went. Ever since that happened, Aster's been one of the better teams in China. And now that we have the actual 5-man roster, we can get into Aster's actual results. And in this Dota season, they end up playing well in the divisional, regional Chinese stuff. They end up getting 2nd in Tour 1. They get 3rd in Tour 2, which actually would have qualified in the 2 different majors. Problem is the first major was canceled due to COVID, so they couldn't go to that major. And then the second major, none of the Chinese teams were able to attend because of the Chinese lockdowns. So they had to play the Chinese regional final instead, where they got 2nd, losing to LGD. Tour 3 comes around. They get 2nd place again, which qualifies them to the Arlington major. And they actually do very well at the Arlington major. They end up making the winners finals. They go on a Christian. They actually make the losers finals. My bad. They end up losing in winners to Team Spirit, who won the major, and then in losers they also lost to Team Spirit, who won the major. Doubly them by the champion. That's a what can you do right there. They then go to ESL Malaysia, a tournament that Liquid was at, and unlike Liquid, they did very well at ESL Malaysia. They got second place, losing to OG in the final. So Aster were considered by many to be the second best Chinese team going into the major. Some consider them third behind RNG, but generally you see them considered the second best Chinese team going into this TI. And in the group stage, they had a few rough series, but they still made it into winners. They went 10-8 in Group B. This qualified them for winners, and in winners, they ended up playing Team Liquid. Now, Team Liquid were favored in the series. They played better in groups, but Team Aster just kind of beat them down. They say, you know what? We can do this. We can win this. And they won this. It's fairly convincing 2-0 in favor of Team Aster. This brings them into a winners semis dates with Tundra Esports. That one did not go as well as their Team Liquid series. It was a somewhat contested series in terms of they had some competitive games, but it was still a 2-0. Aster were not really going to win that one. Tundra were absolutely on fire. They had been crushing it all tournaments. And then Team Aster get a regional showdown with PSG LGD. And LGD, at this point, had been the best Chinese team for years now. They had the, on paper, more talented lineup. They had the team that, beat them in the regional leagues. They were the Chinese favorites. They're considered by many to be the future champion of TI11. They were the odds-on favorite team to win TI11. And Aster managed to rewrite history. Everyone thought they were probably going to lose to LGD. LGD was the better Chinese team. Everyone knew it, except for Aster. Aster says, you know what? We don't care that you think LGD is the better team. We are not going to bend over because they are the kings of our region. We are going to beat them. And they beat them. It was actually a fairly good series, too. They were played very clean in the series. They get Ori as Lena twice. It goes very well for them. And as a result, they now end up with a rematch with Team Liquid. In terms of overall legacy ramifications, for Liquid, for Matu, this is your last tournaments. You go out on top, 2-time TI champion, and suddenly it's like, okay, now I'm one of the greatest carries to ever play. No denying that one. There have been very few players to ever win 2 TIs, so that would be the big accomplishment there. For Zai, this man has accomplished everything in Dota except for winning a TI. Winning that would solidify his great career. For players like Mickey and Sanya, and Boxy, suddenly they're top champions in 2 different esports, both Han and in Dota. They go on to being a member of the E. This is a huge deal for really anybody. For Team Aster, a lot of the ramifications. Sure, there are the individual ramifications for players like, especially Monet. You get to avenge some of the past losses. You get to finally get over that hump. But a lot of it is much more for your region. China had been the best region in Dota for years and for years and for years. They had been the best team during the late Dota 1 period. With a couple of notable exceptions, they were the best team in Dota 2 from its inception until, the mid-2010s. They were either always the best or they were always competitive, with the rare exceptions of tournaments like TI3. And China's been on a bit of a down stretch in terms of TI, where they would be playing well in these third-party tournaments, they'd be playing well in these majors, and they would win these majors, and they would go to TI, and they'd have teams place well at TI. But these teams were never able to get over the hump, whether it was losing in the grand finals multiple times like LGD has, or these top 3, top 4 placements, but still coming up short with teams like LGD Forever Young, or teams like IG, or teams like Vici. It would mean a lot to Chinese Dota for Team Aster to win this. It would be an unbelievably big deal. Maybe the first time that a Chinese team has won TI in 6 years, in 5 different TIs. Their last win was at TI6, that was the Wings gaming team. And to win here would be massive redemption for the Chinese region. Regardless, though, for both of these teams, it is an uphill battle. Not only do they have to win this series against each other, but they have to go on and play losers finals against the loser of Secret and Tundra. And then the grand finals against the winner of Secret and Tundra. So it is the hardest road for either of the two. But I'll be back soon with the second installments, the Secret and Tundra ramifications video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy my contents, I've got plenty more on my YouTube. Also have a Twitter and a Twitch. They're on my screen and also in the description below. I'm hoping this take ends up being kept. I actually had a pretty extensive take earlier, but I didn't actually like the take quality, so I kind of threw it in the trash, and I'm hoping the second extensive take ends up being better than the first one, but I will see you soon for the Secret and Tundra, what victory means to those two teams video. For now, though, thank you for watching, and as always, have a great night.